Welcome to today's PAWSCAST.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our PAWSCAST on adjusting to college. I'm Dr. Amanda Vanderveer, and this is Emily Llewellyn, therapist at CAPS here at FSU. And we're going to be talking today about adjusting to college. That's a huge transition. Switching from high school to college is just such a big culture shock for anybody. I know for me it was, like, I got here and I was like, what is going on? So what do you think, Emily, are some of the biggest problems that students face when they come to college for the first time?
I think a lot of it is just like, this is everybody's first time being independent and kind of being away from their parents or the grown-ups that they grew up with and having to do everything on your own. So, in the fall, especially when we're having kind of freshmen who are coming through, like a lot of times I'm the first appointment they've ever made without a grown-up calling for them or calling and saying like, hey, this is when they're going to show up. And a lot of times I'm also one of their first, like, oh, I have to kind of maintain my own care kind of thing. I also think just everything is new. So the idea, one of the things that we talk about in therapy is this idea of like stress inoculation, right? Which is where we learn how to deal with stressors based on events that show up and where we're either guided or things that we kind of make up on our own. So good example, like emotional regulation. Sometimes the first time we've ever been rejected is when a parent or grown-up tells us no to something in like a grocery store when we're, 2, 3, something like that. And we learn how to regulate in some way. Sometimes great, sometimes not so great, but we learn how to regulate. And when you come into college, if you've never gone through stressors like big changes or learning how to make friends or learning how to live independently in some way, it's going to be a lot of trying and trial and error and figuring it out and making mistakes, and that can be really emotionally draining and definitely make you feel like, oh god, I don't know what I'm doing. What am I, like, am I supposed to be here?
Right. Yeah. Just the idea of like being responsible for taking care of yourself and having to do your own laundry, your own dishes, your own everything all of a sudden.
No, for sure. And being accountable to only yourself. So like when it comes to, let's say, cleaning, for example, how many of us have heard the line of like a parent or a grown-up being like, clean your room. If you don't clean your room, you're going to not be able to go out, or this or that.
And there's some punishment.
Right, but when you live in your first dorm, I'm going to say, especially if you're in a single, you might run into more conflict if you're in a double or something with a
Please
roommate.
Don't be that roommate.
Don't be the roommate that leaves food out for like 6 days and then it's like, it's still good, it's fun. You're going to run into not having anybody hold you accountable, so it becomes the learning how to be self-accountable around that kind of stuff, and that is super hard. That's very difficult to be like, I'm the only person in this space, but maybe I should at least get all of the garbage out of my room. And it doesn't have to be tidy, but it was gross kind of thing.
Yeah, and being accountable to oneself, that's a huge transition. And like that comes in with our sleep patterns, with getting up in the morning and going to class. Like nobody is making you go to class. You should go to class. But
go to class, please. That's kind of the whole point.
But nobody is hunting you down and knocking on your door or like setting off your alarm clock. Or my grandfather used to yank our toes in the morning to get us up. Like nobody's doing that. So that's a big transition too. Like being responsible.
For sure. No, and it can be very difficult of a transition to get to that. And then also like it can, like I said, it makes people question like, oh gosh, I'm like not adult enough or I'm not ready I think it also is very isolating because it almost looks like nobody else is struggling with that. But then if you like talk to anybody who's new to college, almost every single person is struggling with that unless they are like a non-traditional student, something like that.
Yeah. And I remember that personally, like looking around my freshman year and going, everybody's got it together. I'm freaking out. Why? But like everybody was freaking out. That was the thing. And just like we all held it together and everybody thought that everybody was good, but everybody was not good. So
no, I would say most people are struggling, especially I always say that the first semester and the last semester are the hardest semesters of college. First semester because you're transitioning in, and last semester because you're transitioning out. And so it's a lot of change. And I always encourage, be forgiving with yourself. It's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to start asking people, what do I do here?
Right. That was my big mistake as a college student. Like, I was first generation, so I'm going to do this myself, and I'm going to be independent, because I had to figure out, like, how to get into college by myself. So I figured, like, that's how it is the whole way through. But no, there are tons of people here that you can ask help from, and please do. It's so much easier if you do.
Yeah, for sure. No, and that's one of my jobs in the fall is helping to be not just a therapist, but a life skills teacher. And, being like, there are these campus offices, go to them. Yeah. Don't just sit here and suffer. It's unnecessary suffering at this point.
You have options. You can go here and get what you need. So we've talked about anxiety before in a previous podcast that we did on anxiety. So please check that out. But what about the switch from high school to college stresses us out the most, would you say?
For a lot of students, I think today, I think there's a couple of things. One is no longer just having friends that come as a result of being close to each other or sharing the exact same schedule. I think that's a huge thing, because you will see a lot of freshmen who end up very isolated from other people, and not just freshmen. I think freshmen are kind of the new ones, so they're always kind of a little more scared, but you see it throughout any level of undergrad or graduate school of being like, oh, I don't have a social support system here. So I think that's one big one, and already been talking about it, but that kind of, I have to hold myself accountable. Like, I am the one now who answers. So if a professor has an issue with me, they're not going to my parents, they're coming to me. Or if I get a parking ticket because I parked in the wrong spot, and instead of parking in a black lot, I parked in a red lot on accident. I have to pay the ticket and figure out where I'm supposed to go and how I pay the ticket. And if you don't know how to do those things, that's very overwhelming to deal with. Yeah,
absolutely. And just making friends, that's a whole thing. Right
so
there.
Difficult to make friends. Like, as an adult, it really is. And I think colleges they're pretty aware of it, and they try things, but it's how often are students really utilizing them and able to come through and go to them and finding ways to put themselves out there, which we've definitely seen more issues like post intense pandemic time we all had to self-isolate, we all had to stay away from each other, and
we got into the habit of that,
right? And then you have to relearn some of your social skills as well, which is so hard to do.
Oh my gosh,
and like
it's not like riding a bike.
No. It's not. It's because it's putting yourself into a place of vulnerability that we are just not used to.
Right.
Like, it is just being in a vulnerable place and being like, somebody will talk to me maybe, and then not feeling like, oh, I can't do that, I gotta keep myself safe, it's fine, I'll just do this alone, and that sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, from my experience, I remember being in college, and especially the first year or so, when I was home, I felt like I should be here, and when I was here, I felt like I should be home. There was that weird, like, I don't feel like I'm in the right place. Like, I missed my family at home, but then when I was at home, I missed my friends up here. So it was such a back and forth. And family back home and relationships back home can make the transition easy, or they can make it more difficult. So what do you recommend for people who have college students heading off?
That's hard. I wish I could give like a great oh, this is exactly what you should do kind of answer, but it's kind of a it depends. Because for some people, we'll find that if they have kind of that safety net of social and family support at home, it gives them more confidence to go out and be like, okay, well, if I don't make friends at this after dark that's being held on campus, that's okay, because I know I still have friends at home, but I'm at least trying. But for other people, it would do the opposite of, well, I already have friends back home, I already have my family back home. why would I go out and try to make friends?
Why do I need to invest in
why would I go meet people who I'm not going to care about, or who I'm only going to know for these 4 years, or who are like total strangers? Like, why would I do that? So I always encourage a balance. It's good to have support systems where you are physically at. So definitely not saying like, oh, just ignore your family and friends back home. Like, just let those relationships die. No, not at all. But that it's good to also find people, even if they're not your best friends in the entire world, but to have people that you can go to on campus who are going to understand like what it's like to be on campus, and either stressors that may be happening, or funny things that may happen, of being like, did you see this happen across campus? Because friends back home, if they're not here, you're not really gonna get it.
Yeah.
And so it's all about, I think, balance, and I think it's also a privilege for those people that do have social and family support back home. And of course, if people are coming to college and they don't have that, it's almost even more important to encourage like going out and socializing and utilizing offices that help with that, because we have offices who help with first generation students, or students who maybe are slightly more isolated from family and social support back home for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I remember coming up here, and there were people here that didn't know anybody when they got here. I had some friends that graduated with me that came up here at the same time, so I had a little bit of a support network, but I can't even imagine like nothing.
Right, like so not.
I admire you if you're doing that. I just want you to know that, because that's big.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm in the same boat. I'm from the area, so a lot of friends went to Frostburg, and so I didn't have to, like, I already had social support that was both at college and at home, because they're basically the same. But no, it can be so hard to come out of your shell and be like, oh, my first week where I'm going through all of these transitions and I'm getting all of this information, I'm trying to figure out how to get to classes on time and keep myself on a schedule, and worrying about all of the things, and being like, oh, I also have to make friends at like some point.
Yeah. Let me just put that on the list there. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big transitions that I struggled with back in the day was the transition from high school workload to college workload.
Yes, absolutely.
I thought it was going to be the same. It was not.
It's not.
It was not.
No. Well, and I think like one of the big things is not having those classes every single day. So I don't know, like block schedules are not something I really interacted with. So I know that students get, if you went on a block schedule, students do get a little bit of variety of like, you don't have the same classes every single day. Yeah. But for those students who are coming from, start at 7:50 in the morning, or 8 o'clock in the morning and go until 2:45, 3 o'clock, and have the same classes every day, if a project's coming up, it's going to be on the board. The teacher's probably going to be reminding you. Whereas there are some professors that will hand you the syllabus and they say everything in their due dates are going to be on the syllabus, and they might say something the class before a project or a paper is due. So that's like a huge change as well, of being like, oh, like I have to keep track of these things.
The teacher isn't going to hunt you down and say, where is your project?
Right. They're just going to, depending on the professor, just potentially give you a 0, or they might give you the chance to turn it in late for a less grade, and those are like huge issues that come up for a lot of freshmen. And I would also say there's this big idea that you have to keep every struggle secret. Your professors cannot know. They can't know that you're human.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, if my professor knows that I'm, didn't get a lot of sleep because I was anxious, like I'm not gonna be like, I can't turn this in, I'll just, whatever, I'll just throw whatever at the paper, or I'll just stay up all night. The amount of professors who will like listen to you be like, hey, can I turn this in a day late because of X, Y, and Z? Can I have an extension on this? There are a decent amount who will listen. And there might be some slight consequences, like I do know professors that will be like, yes, you can have an extension, but it's 5 points off your, the final grade of the project or whatever. But most of them are willing to work with students and be like, no, this is life, so it's okay if you need to, take some time. Again, not every professor. It's going to be kind of, it depends on who you're talking to and what department and who they are professionally, but
And it's definitely a no if you don't ask, but if you do ask, there's the potentiality that they will be able to help you out and work with you.
Yeah, I would say like another big thing is going to professors' office hours. And sometimes I think that students are like, oh, I only should go if like, I don't know, I'm at the rock bottom, I really can't figure out what's going on. I'm like, no, like if you have a question, professors love seeing their students, and it shows them that you're trying, if nothing else. And that can help with their grading because they're going to take that into consideration as well.
Yeah. As a former professor, I would sit in my office hours and just like eventually just end up watching YouTube because I was like, I'm bored. Nobody's coming. Me. But yeah, and with the grading and having something late, I always told my students, like, okay, so you're gonna lose 10 points because it's really late, but that's still better than a 0. Anything is better than a 0.
Yes. So, there's a lot of times you'll run into, especially new students, freshmen, who get a case of the F-its of like, well, just F it then, I'm just not going to do it. And I'm always like, no. Like, a lot of professors
don't do that.
They run on like how many points you accumulate to get to your grade. And I'm always like, no, like, it's still better to get even like 5 points out of 100 rather than 0 points out of 100. Like, everything is better than 0. So even if you're turning it in late, you know you're going to get a C on the project and you've accepted that, still turn it in, still get those points, because there's so many ways to be flexible and work around, or even retaking the class, which is a huge difference with high school as well. If you get a bad grade in the class, you can take it in a different semester, and then the higher of the 2 grades is what shows up on the transcript.
Yeah, I think that was, I definitely had that when I was a student here. So I would screw up on a test and then I'd be like, well,
I'm just going to fail this class.
I'm going to fail this class. And I didn't even know that you could withdraw. Like, what? You can withdraw? Like, it doesn't count anymore? Like, how?
No,
so, learn about this stuff, people. It's very important. If you're a first-generation student, you may have no idea that this stuff exists. So ask around.
Yeah, and we have an office specifically on campus that is for first-generation students. It is called TRIO. I highly, highly encourage. They have resources, and they help you with things like FAFSA and time management and planners, and they'll check in with you like every week to make sure you're getting things done. It is a wonderful office. I highly recommend it. They're fantastic, and I encourage my freshmen who come in that are first-time clients who I learn are first-generation students, like, please reach out and go talk to them. Yeah, please go see what they can offer, what they can help you with, because it will inevitably help you in the end.
Yeah, I could have saved myself a lot of heartache had that been present when I was here. That would have been great for me. But I think there are a lot of offices on campus that can be very helpful. So just reaching out and saying, what do you guys do?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know what we do, just ask.
Yeah. Shooting.
How can you help me?
Actually, you don't even, for a lot of offices, you don't even have to like go in. You can just send, like, if you send an email being like, hey, I'm new to campus. What does your office do, and where do you guys help with things? And like 9 times out of 10, they're going to answer you via email, or sometimes they might be like, what do you want to come into the office? And we can answer your questions, which also works of, just utilizing whatever you can to actually like support yourself in college.
Yeah, that would be one of my biggest suggestions for incoming students. Learn what's available to you. Get to know what's out there and what's there to help you, because there's a ton of stuff there. Do you have any other advice that you would give?
Trying to think. I'm going to be using some of my personal experience just because I was also a student at Frostburg, and once I started, even though I had friends that were from the area and also went to Frostburg, once we started getting into our like outside of our general education classes and more into our specialized like majors classes, I was the only person that was in my major or even in sometimes the building. So I was like the only person I knew that was in Dial. So I encourage people to like go out and try clubs and organizations that you don't necessarily, like, you might have an interest in, but you're like, I don't know, like, if I'm gonna fit in. And the example that I use for myself is, and I don't know if it's still a thing, but there was a club that an acquaintance from high school had started on campus, and it was basically just people getting together and playing Smash Bros, like the video game from Nintendo. And I needed a club that was like not academic oriented. I was academic out at that point. And so I was like, well, I'll go and give it like a look around, especially because I had an acquaintance who I knew was running the thing. Yeah. And it was so fun. I loved it. I met people who I never otherwise would have met. A lot of them were like computer and IT people, like computer science majors or even like master's level. And I met some of the professors from there as well. And it was so fun because it was low key. If I didn't show up, it wasn't a huge deal, but I got to connect with these people, and I sucked at the video game. I jumped off the edge so many times on accident, and people would just be like, Emily, you accidentally lost one of your lives. I'm like, I know, guys, I know. I haven't played Smash Bros. Since I was like 6, okay? But it connected me with people. Yeah. I had a social support system that wasn't like super deep or emotional, but I got out of like just being at home. I was living at home at the time with like my parents, and I was making connections with people who I didn't know, and it was fun to just like talk with them and be like, oh hey, yeah, that's right. Or making connections where some of them, God love them, did teach me how to play the game eventually, of being like, okay, you keep hitting left, stop doing that, because you're already too left. So I like encourage people, go out and find those clubs. And if you can't find them, it's okay to start making them. Like, that club didn't exist until an acquaintance was like, right, let's do this. Let's have a video game club on campus. So yeah, go to things that you wouldn't expect. I was also in history club, which like had absolutely 0% to do with things that I was studying psychology and women's studies was my minor. I was like, no history. I took a history 100 level class, but I had acquaintances that were in it, and one of them brought me to a meeting one time because we were going to hang out, and then I just ended up there. I was like secretary for 2 years, and I was like, not even a history major guy. So go out and try things and do things, because I think you'll be surprised by where you find connections. And just,
and that's a great way to find yourself too, because a lot of freshmen come in thinking they know what they want to major in, and then they get into it and they're like, oh, maybe not. So, and that's very common, by the way.
So common.
I had 5 majors when I was here. How many did you have?
Oh, I'm an
exception.
Were
all on it.
I came in as a psychology major, so but I use one of
But we averaged to 3 then.
One of my best friends, though, who's a couple of years older than me, that came here, he had 6 majors, I think. So he went from like psychology to accounting to marketing to graphic design to something else. There was something also, I think maybe he was computer and IT for a little bit, and then finished his degree with the degree in physical geography. So like all over the place, and like that's okay to think that you want to do something. You start doing classes and realize, like, oh no,
this is not it.
Yeah,
but this is a great time to experiment with that and find out who you are. I started with a physics major. Guys, let me tell you, calculus is hard. Calculus is really hard. So that's how I ended up, like, after a couple bebops along the path, being a sociology major. So that's learning to try new things and taking that opportunity. Like, I didn't know I wanted to be a sociology major until I took a sociology class, and I'm like, these are my people. This is where I belong.
Yeah, well, and I think that, like, with clubs, that's kind of the same way.
That's the same exact experience. Yes.
Yeah, of just, and it can be really scary because you're like, oh, I'm gonna go do this thing, and what if I don't like it? And it's like, well, the worst case scenario is
you don't like it.
Yeah,
stop.
You're back in the exact same place that you were when you started, and that it's okay. And I think this is another aspect that I'll push a little bit. Like, it's okay if you go into a club and you make a bunch of mistakes. So like I said, when I started this video game club, I was not good. I was very much crap. But going there, I was able to make connections with people who did help me get better, which, was fun. And then I was able to, pass along sometimes tips when other people were coming through and they didn't know what they were doing. I'd be like, oh, do this. And they'd be like, oh, cool. Like, it's just nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, while we're talking about this, is there anything else you want to talk about? Any other resources we should mention?
I mean, I could mention my office. No,
Yes.
if you start to struggle and you realize that like the adjustment is super difficult, running into a lot of homesickness, even just like you're living with a roommate for the first time and you're getting into conflicts because you know they leave the cap off of their toothpaste and there's toothpaste everywhere, and you have grown up in a house where it was drilled into you never do that. Come to the counseling center, come and see us, because that's part of our job. We very much expect in the fall to have freshmen who are coming in who are struggling to adjust. So that's a diagnosis that we give is an adjustment disorder. Of what qualifies an adjustment disorder is struggling to adjust to a new life circumstance. Like that's, and it has to have lasted for like 2 weeks or something. Like a lot of people have that. Don't try and tough it out and, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you're gonna be fine. It's okay to come out and ask for help, and a lot of time we'll have resources and tools and tips and tricks and helping you figure out where to find organizations, or you know, if you're struggling with calculus, you know, where the tutoring center is, helping you get over to the tutoring center.
Tutoring would not have helped. It was just not connecting.
I only took statistics, so that was as far as I went in my math career. But no, or even like, okay, how do I type a professional or at least semi-professional email to this professor to ask for help, instead of just being like, hey, yo, teach. What do? Warm regards. Like, finding ways. Like, that's something that we do in our office. I have said many times, like, I'm not just a counselor. I become like a life skills teacher and a tutor at times if they're coming in with psych questions, which sometimes I can answer and be like, go this direction. Or like how to write emails, or how to find friends, or what in the community can I do? Are there community resources or clubs or places that I can go? And, you know, calling up and being like, hey, what time's your guys' like knitting circle class start? You know, I have a client who wants to do it, just trying to find resources and, you know, finding things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all really good ways to help kids, students transition to being happy, healthy sophomores.
Yeah, and with our services being free, like completely. You can come in for like 3 sessions, and if you feel good after the 3 sessions and you feel like you've got your footing, you don't have to continue. You can be like, hey, I'm good, I'll call if I need more sessions, and be like, great, fantastic. We also do a bunch of outreach. I'm the outreach coordinator, so I go around and talk to different offices or make plans and be like, we're doing this. So you can also come up to tables and ask. I'm trying to start something called Coffee with the Counselor, where I will sit in a room with coffee, free coffee. You guys can come and talk to me and just ask questions like, what does it mean to be in therapy? Or do you know where this office is? And, you know,
hopefully it's more productive than my office hours.
Yes, more people come in. I'm like, free food and free coffee.
I think the food and coffee might get some people. Oh, that's great. That's great. And also, we're at the SAFE office. You're welcome to pop in and say hi to us. We can help connect you also. We do a lot of work with students who are new. We have the Back to Earth workbook that's going to be attached in the links with this. So please check that out. That's a wealth of information in and of itself. So I wanted to thank you today, Emily, for coming in and talking to me. I had a good time, and I hope everybody learned a lot about adjusting to college and how we can make it easier. It does not have to be hard.
No, that's, I think, you know, to end it, that's one of the things that kind of always breaks my heart into little pieces sometimes, of when students come in and I wish I'd done this last semester because I would have functioned so much better. I would have felt so much better. I'm like, please, like, encourage other people then, like, come in and see us. I promise, like, we're not scary. Clearly, I'm very terrifying. No, we're not scary. Please come in, and we even do like 30-minute consultations. So if you just have questions, but you don't necessarily know if you're ready for therapy, you can answer very general questions. And you can set up with any therapist who works like at the center or like I said, if you see me around at different tables, like come up and ask questions. It's okay too.
Yeah, please talk to us. We're here to help. Well, thanks for listening today, and I hope everybody has a great semester. Bye.
Thank you for being a part of our PAWSCAST. This health and wellness podcast is brought to you by the Prevention Center and Peer Education Network at Frostburg State University. If you would like more information about our programs, visit us in Pullen Hall, room 109, or call us at 301-687-4761. Or you can always send us an email at safeoffice@frostburg.edu. Remember to watch our other episodes and stay tuned throughout the semester. Thank you!